Well, what do we have here? A nice big box with a big Waves logo on it. Wow, let's find out what this is. What we have here is a demo unit for the Waves SoundGrid servers. We are going to go over using this guy, how it can be set up, the whole purpose of using it. Hello guys, so as you may have just seen, Waves have been very kind and sent me over a loan of their SoundGrid server. Here I've got the Impact server. And what this is essentially its own computer that runs all the DSP, or as much DSP as it can handle, from one of my projects using Waves and some of their third-party plugins as well. So if you rewind a little bit, Pro Tools used to have the HD system. Now they still do an HD system, but it's in a different format to what it once was. It used to require you to have your DigiDesign audio interface, and then you would buy separate racks that added onto that, and they would add audio input and they would add DSP power as well. And they would offload the RTAS plugin format onto something like this, where they're running on their own separate chip. This takes all of the weight in processing away from your machine. So you guys that have followed me for a while have seen some of my projects where they get quite big and heavy and there's lots of processing going on. I'd have to freeze like 16, maybe even 24 channels just to keep that going, especially when recording. Something like this, I could offload all of that processing onto those DSP chips, onto the server here, and keep it running as normal. That extra processing power is offloaded here and my computer's free to carry on doing its main task, so processing some of the other audio information, the graphical processing as well. And the DSP side is handled on this little guy. So what we're going to go over is just what this can do, how we would set it up, and the sort of person it's going to benefit. Now, in terms of who it's going to benefit, someone who's running an older rig, is still running one of the old G5s for example, and a lot of the newer plugins, they're bit processor heavy, plugin architecture's changed quite a lot since those machines became obsolete, and they use a lot more power. The architecture of the way the chips have developed, there's still the i5 and i7 processors, but the architecture of them is drastically different and they can just trample what they used to. And if you're still having to work on that sort of system and you don't want to spend $2.5 grand or more upgrading to a newer system, you could spend about $700 on one of these guys, and this can offload around 400 or so plugins depending on what they are. Now that's running in mono at 44.1, and things like reverb, they're going to be a bit heavier. I think this guy can handle up to 6 versions of the H reverb, for example. But if you just want to offload your DSP and your main channel processing with your Waves plugins, that's going to be able to handle it for you. Alright, so we've got Logic open here, and I just wanted to show you the quick setup process and how Studio Rack works with the SoundGrid server. Now, one thing to note, you can probably hear it in the background, it's quite loud. The way I've got it set up here, I've just had to put it on the desk. Ideally, it works through an Ethernet cable, so you'd have it away from your workspace. Where I've got it set up here, just because of the way I'm having to set up and test the demo unit, it's pretty close. And if you're in the sort of environment I am here, where you couldn't put it somewhere away and like locked away in a cupboard or even in a different room, it's probably not ideal for you. It's gonna impede way too much in terms of the sound on what you're trying to work on. That aside, let's look at how we're going about this. So in Logic, we've got the Studio Rack plugin opened here, which as you can see is this guy. Now this is a plugin that then hosts other plugins inside it, other Waves plugins. You can host up to 8 of them. And this switches us between our local and our SoundGrid server CPU for processing. So you see right up at the top here, next to my little recording icon, we've got SG. And that is the SoundGrid server. So it knows it's connected via Ethernet. And we've got the app here open as well. And you can see that I've got the SoundGrid server running here. SoundGrid server, we've got the SGS1 here, and we can see it's on and active. So what this means, if I were to add a plugin in, so if we go to Dynamics and we just grab the C1 gate combo, for example, that's now loaded in here, and that would work as normal in the track itself. Could use it as a normal plugin. If we save the project, it loads back up in this SoundGrid. However, if we've got a really busy project and we want to start offsetting some of the CPU usage, we can go up here and we can do switch to SoundGrid. That's going to reload the plugin, and it's now working from the SoundGrid server. It's no longer touching the CPU of the Mac I'm working on. And that's sort of the beauty of it. As far as also being able to combine multiple chains and having them run as you see fit. See, now both of these are running on the SoundGrid system. So just loaded up a quick piece of audio here just so we can see how everything's working. So as you can see, we've got our meter reading per plugin as well. And then we've also got an in and out in the Studio Rack. And as well, Studio Rack has its own mixer section. For the purposes of what we're doing here, we wouldn't really use this. However, if you wanted to record externally through plugins on the way in, then you can absolutely do that using that process. So right now, these plugins are processing audio in real time with zero latency, and they're not affecting the CPU of my machine at all. They are going off of the SoundGrid system here. And that is the primary function of bringing a SoundGrid server into a studio environment in a small rig, is to be able to just take the extra juice and take that processing power and offload it when you're doing extremely busy projects. Now, something I do quite a lot is obviously do these larger projects and record the sessions and screen capture and record audio all at once. And it takes a huge chunk of my processing power. You may have seen videos on this channel where I'm getting clicks and pops and other issues while I'm trying to record the video, and that's because of this. So taking something like this and being able to offset the processing power of a bunch of plugins, super useful. So guys, that's a quick look at the SoundGrid server and what it can do. I hope the video was helpful for you. If you want to know more about it, throw questions down below and I will get you in another video. See you soon.